We're talking about one of those crazy $20,000 mandolins today. It's a reissue of the Golden Era 1923 F-5 Master Model in Cremona Burst. This last latch is a little tricky. You gotta push it to the left and then pull up. But let's go ahead and take a look at this historic piece. As if you're new to my show, I'm primarily a guitar historian. I like to talk about 70s and 80s Gibson history. This is not my strong suit, but I did some research, and I'm gonna fill you in the best that I can about Gibson mandolins, as well as the early days of Gibson, because typically anything before the 50s, I don't really know much, but this dates all the way back to a 1923 reissue, which was the golden era for Gibson mandolins. But it actually started all the way back in 1894 with this guy right here, Orville Gibson. Similar to the way the Les Paul and the Telecaster redesigned how we thought of guitars at that time, going into solid body electrics, he developed a brand new style of mandolin that did a very similar thing to make them more boisterous as well as more beautiful. Even over 100 years later, what he and later Lloyd Loar worked together on to create changed mandolin history forever. Prior to the 1900s, the most famous style of mandolin was the Neapolitan style. It was more of a bowl-shaped back instrument. You can see it right here. But Orville's mandolin designs, he called them the A and the F. The A's have more of a round teardrop shape to the body, whereas the F's are more fancy. It has these projecting points everywhere, the iconic scroll design within the body, as well as tons of ornateness that we'll talk about today. I mean, just look at the flame figuring on this bad boy. But in short, the A ones are more plain bodied. They're for the artist that's gonna go out and use it, whereas the F, it's a little bit fancy and flamboyant. It's the Florentine style with all those sharp cuts. But he also made mandolas, which were called the H model, mandocellos, which started with K, a mando bass starting with J, and then the original guitar designs had those big round oval sound holes too, that they called the L for the plain style guitars and the O for the fancy ones. And past all of those letters, there were also a number system. So F1 would be the lowest end of the F. And at the beginning, it went all the way till 4. So the bigger the number, the fancier the guitar. They give it better ornamentations. So that's true all the way up till 1922. Sure, later on through the 30s, within the mandolin culture, they introduce other numbers that are higher, but usually that means they're lower end. If you're still lost, but you know about jazz guitars, same thing with Gibson land. L5, the end all be all of jazz. Is there such a thing as an L7 and an L12? Yeah, but they're not as fancy. It's when things start to make less sense. So why do we view 1923 as that golden era model? Like in the Les Paul world, this is a burst. Originals, CME's asking 200 grand for one right now. Whether that's realistic or not, I don't know. But 22 into 23 is when we ditch the oval shape F-hole and we bring Lloyd Loar in and we bring in this F-hole design. And I would assume to make a difference between these new models, they introduce a new number to symbolize this is the finest thing we can possibly make. The F-5 mandolin. I mean, you'll see things like figured maple edges, figured maple back, you've got binding on both sides. You've got not only binding along the neck, but also an additional purfling layer of black to make it super fancy. Headstock, similar stuff going on here. It's not a pure black headstock cap either, but did you see the stinger on the back side? And get this. This isn't just like chrome plated stuff, it's actually silver plated hardware on this, like real silver. Gives it a cool kind of frosty nickel look. Then of course, don't forget about your additional scrolls into the headstock. So to sum all that up, this is reissuing an important year to mandolins, and it's a really, really fancy boy that only insanely wealthy musicians and collectors can ever have the chance to own. So I hope you enjoyed this really in-depth documentation of this one tonight. And once again, make sure you thank Dr. Greg in the comments section. Not every day do I get a $20,000 new Guitar Day order. But besides just the very fine instrument, they reissued the vintage style case. It's got the two clasps on the end and then the modified clasp, I guess you could call it there. It's got a bolted handle that's pretty nice. The green interior is fun, definitely reminds you of the 20s. But they give you the Gibson polishing cloth. Looks like this lifts up, where they give you a reissue vintage 1920s hang tag. I really like that, that's cool. We also get the modern era pre-pack checklist. Could they possibly have to write more on there? So we get another polishing cloth, a little leather pick holder that says Gibson Mandolins. It even has 2 different style picks inside, the triangular as well as the rounded. I thought this next item was a little bit funny. In the stock photos, it looks like they're giving you a little wooden whip. But no, this is a mandolin strap. If you're curious, what is with this scroll design? Is it just to be fancy? No, it serves a purpose. It allows you to wrestle this little doggy, to remove the need for a top strap button. They only need the end pin. If you're curious if that was rope up here, it just looks like entwined leather. Gives you that Chinese finger trap feel. And to match the tininess of the instrument, they even give you a tiny little COA. And they pay homage to Lloyd Lohr in here, showing him with one of his creations over here. And oh wow, that's a fun serial number, 73073. Mirror image numbers like that are fun. Now if you're loving what you've just learned about, but do not want to afford a $20,000 instrument, Gibson and Epiphone, as well as many other manufacturers, make a similar style mandolin. Like for example, Epiphone makes an inspired by Gibson custom shop version of the F-5G model, starting at $1,500. There's also the F-5 Studio down to $600. I like that wine red satin finish version of that. That's got a cool rustic look to it. But even within Gibson Custom, there's a new Sierra Hull signature model that features more of a dulled down satin hue. That one's the same $20,000 price tag, but there's also the F5G model for $85,000. Or for a little bit less yet, there's the regular non-signature F5G for $6,000. And if you really just want to get started, feel free to pick up one of those A-style Epiphones, the Double M30S for $220. Or maybe check out the Mando Birds. Those things are always fun. But this thing keeps trying to talk over me. So let's go ahead and give it a chance to shine. Throw it on over to the workbench to take a detailed look at its parts and specs and fully appreciate this thing for the master-crafted bluegrass king it is. Let's see if we can make sense out of this thing. So if you're thinking, hey, that Cremona Burst looks really familiar, it's kind of similar to the 70s era of Gibson Les Paul Customs, the really nice tobacco sunbursts. It's a pale yellow center with more of a brownish golden honey color along the edge. While shopping around to find him the nicest one I possibly could, I noticed they don't all look the same, and that's due to the red spruce top that they utilize to craft these. Every single piece of wood is going to have different character, and that will make the finish look a little bit different across all of them. But this is a hand-applied varnish finish. And judging from the feel, it just feels like the regular Gibson style gloss finish. Although maybe just a little bit more silky smooth, I guess you could say. There's not very many large areas before you start hitting binding and everything to feel that. But let's start with the scroll. I never realized it was three-dimensional in the fact that this part is significantly higher than over here. They definitely carve that shape into place. That's what that large ridge is. You're seeing the top portion of your spruce top being carved away to form that shape. So it also gets thicker on the back. So it's not one even width throughout the entire piece. And the top itself has a nice carve to it. So it's a bit of a sinking and then another belly and then down. But this model does not have any electronics or piezo. It's all acoustic, so we gotta take a look at our bridge. This is a polished ebony made of real wood, not plastic. I didn't see any pertinent markings on the back. And if you're wondering why this is taped off, this is a floating bridge. It's not pinned. It will move. That'll mess with your intonation. That's similar to an ABR1. It's got thumb wheels to help adjust your action. And I did notice there's a manufacturing date right here on the bottom side of the bridge. I would imagine that's a reissuing of what the originals had. And you also have a similar thing over here on the pickguard if you missed it. It says patent March 30, 09. Now is that 2009? No, it's probably 1909. But this is a tortoiseshell colored pickguard, not black. And as far as how they construct it on the back, looks like they glue an ebony block, not only for your pickguard bracket, but also a long one here along the edge. And here's where documenting some old archtops came in handy. There's 2 barbs sticking off the side, so it's not a screw sinking it into the top. You gotta know to slightly wiggle that out. Here you can see the holes where those barbs go into. I'd imagine mandolin players are resting along that, so that just gives you a really solid surface where it's not gonna move around on you. But it does screw into the edge of the instrument, and I found the end of the bracket rather fascinating. It is also the same tortoiseshell material, and then they utilize a binding material in between just to give it some extra strength. They also have a little felt pad along the edge. Although it seems to cause more harm to the finish than good. I don't know about you guys, but this thing looks really classy without the pick guard. I mean, don't get me wrong, this looks cool too, but I think I'd be rocking that off because it just allows you to appreciate this gorgeous finish. But moving on from all of that, the tailpiece. I've never torn apart a mandolin of this style, so I was like, what do I do? So I took those screws off and it still wasn't coming. So I was just thinking, well, do I need to pull the end pin out? But it's like, I don't want to learn on the $20,000. So I looked up a video. These old ones, you have to apply pressure and this slides off. There are modern versions that just flip up as well and stay connected, but that allows us to see our silver-plated the Gibson with all the other fancy etchings. And the backside, nothing too remarkable, but you do have a string mute right here, which gets married to the top side. So all these strings, they just loop onto these barbs and they get directed the direction they need to go. But there are 8 strings on this model. Now there's 4-string mandolins and there's 8 strings. It's kind of like a 12-string guitar. They're tuned in octaves. And just like guitar, there's alternate tunings, but the standard one is typically G, D, A, E. So that means we're tuned in fifths, kind of like a violin, or you could look at it as an upside down guitar. Did you notice? E, A, D, G, we're just missing the B, E. So think of your fingerings like that, and that might help you get into mandolin. But now I'm curious, what do the raw woods look like on this thing? Let's break out the endoscope. This is the part I was looking forward to most about this episode. So here we can see our reissue stickering that has our serial number on it. It's not printed anywhere else that I know of. So F5, there's our serial 73073, and we can see the original patent date, March 30th, 1906, and then we also got 1920 through 21, and it's our usual hereby guaranteed stuff here, the Gibson Mandolin Guitar Company. But now, checking out our construction, looks like we got a couple of tone bars for bracing across the top. They appear to be glued in rather than carved, if I can judge that seep out by anything. But there's our end pin. That does appear just to be sank in there. It probably would have popped out, but we've got a little bit of a mahogany block right there. And then our typical curved edges. That just gives them a gluing surface to get the top, back, and sides together. But here you can see that little hole there is where the pick guard gets screwed into. And right up here, we're looking where the neck joins into the body. So there appears to be some sort of a mahogany block right there. This is right up by the scroll, so it looks like they put that there to give it a little bit more rigidness. And then this is some sort of an area to glue the neck into. And interesting enough, it looks like there's another wooden mahogany cleat along the edge right there. But looking up alongside the top, we can see what the red spruce looks like normally, as well as some more of the glue seep out. It looks a little funny in this area. I wonder if that's just the colorations of the wood, or is there something else going on? I suppose now that I'm looking at it, it appears there's some sort of a mesh backing that they put along the F-hole route. Maybe that's to give it more strength. Here's a look at the other side. It just appears to be a oval-shaped cutout that they apply there. Now looking through our other F-hole, we have another one. Talks about the air chamber and tuning and testing. But this one dates to July 9th, 2023. Hasn't really been that long since Gibson announced these things. It only feels like it was a year. I find it funny they have a Lloyd Loar signature there as the acoustic engineer. Produced for the 100th anniversary. But that maple's just looking great in here. But they always look better once you put a cool finish on them. But I want to talk about the binding real quick. They called it celluloid nitrate, and I just figured, they're just reissuing the plastics they used at that time. It's a little bit more than that. I believe it's Martin. They use something called an Ivoroid binding, where it has these lines in it. That might have been Taylor. It's one of the acoustic manufacturers. This has those same rigid lines within it. I'm only assuming that that is a reissuing spec and not tooling marks, as those lines are present everywhere on this piece. And oh my goodness, I see it now. that mahogany block, you can see it from the top. Or perhaps that's a different block, but you can see how the binding comes over straight, and then they craft the backing to the floating part of our fretboard and neck. I suppose that makes sense because the neck is maple, so I should have known that, hey, something was going on there. But it has that same thing with the 3-ply binding along our fretboard edge. And I'm just trying to give you all the unique angles that you never see on these things, because it's not every day somebody makes a video like this on this instrument. I might not be able to do justice playing this thing today, but I can at least show you that much. So we've got an ebony fretboard, and when we say things get fancy, I see things like dot inlays, and it's like, hey, Lloyd Lohr, you could go fancier than that, I bet. But then I saw what the nut was made out of, and at first I looked at it and I thought, is that really mother of pearl? There's no way. So I go to the spec sheets, and sure enough, I didn't even know that was a possibility. You can apparently make mother of pearl nuts. I would love to see that on an electric guitar. Not sure how it affects the tone, but it is cool. Because that's the thing in electric guitar land, you never get real pearl tips. It's always fake stuff. But for this model, they actually took the time to give you the real pearl. That's got the shine that you can only get in that. And of course your dot inlays over here, they might not be the fanciest looking, but they are also pearl. And we get 29 frets if you count these extended ones, but only 20 full ones, and then it just gets smaller up here. But I measure about a 1.09 inch nut width, about 1.48 by the 12th, with a 0.85 first fret neck depth, and it's about 1 by the 9th. Now if you're thinking, holy cow, that thing is chunky, it's a very pronounced V-shaped neck, and you can even see it right there. They just called it a 1923. Here's a look at that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. You can see what I'm talking about. It's got a slight asymmetricalness to it. Like the bump isn't directly in the center, just slightly offset. I told you how the body binding was 3-ply. You technically have another 3-ply along the neck. You've got that extra black layer that underlines your side marker inlays. Now your side markers, it's just like your pickguard material. Shine a light on it, you can see the red. These are tortoise shell colored as well. It's just a little bit hard to see. Some are more red than others. As far as the scale length, they're supposed to be 13.9 inches. And no radius, it's flat. And now our headstock, expertly ornamented. You've got the Gibson up top, and we have the flower pot / chalice. If you don't see it, here's your cup design, and here's the flower coming out of it. A lot of times the flower vine portion will be made out of abalone. This one, I suppose it could be a rather weakly colored abalone, but this all looks like similar pearl to me. I like how the inside of the cup has that slightly darker look to it in some angles. And then here we can see the bare maple neck before a finish was applied and our style of truss rod. But easily the biggest surprise to me that I was not expecting was the fact that it's not actually a black headstock. It's a very dark wooden color. I tried to look up the spec sheet to see what wood that is. They don't label it on the website. I've always loved rosewood headstock guitars, and it gives a similar appearance. But from a couple feet away, it just looks ebony. But crank up the brightness and you can see what I'm seeing. As far as the truss rod cover, it's your typical Gibson style one, just a little bit slimmer, but it's only 1-ply like a Les Paul Jr. And for this 1923 reissue model, note the slotted screws for everything, including your bottom tailpiece and your pickguard bracket mounter. That screw also has a little metal washer around it, I would assume to not crack our plastic. That helps secure that to the edge of the mandolin. And I'm just now seeing it. They're trying to make it look like the binding just continues up and over that. It's a shame they didn't age that to match the color of the binding. And one more cool thing I noticed about our headstock. In case you don't believe me about the mother of pearl nut, they antique the lacquer and it runs over top of it right there. So you can see the golden shininess of it. That's really cool. Now flipping over to the backside, could we have asked for a better figured maple back? Trust me, I looked through quite a few of these. Not all of them looked like this. Some are a little bit more tiger stripey, some are pinstriped, some even had a bit of a chevron flame to it. This is the style I like, so I hope Dr. Greg enjoys it as well. Because the chatoyant movement of these woods, you know, the dancing of the flame, so to speak. It's fantastic. And it's not even just the back, it's also the edges. I mean, I didn't really know what I was getting into when I ordered one of these. I was afraid that maybe the beauty of this would be lost on somebody who doesn't necessarily know mandolin, but nah, I just appreciate the fine craftsmanship and really fine woods because it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. You even get a little bit of that on the edge of our headstock. All the figured beauty just comes along the back and sides because this is red maple. I would assume that's a similar species that they used back in the 1920s because that's the other thing about this really expensive $20,000 reissue is they did the 3D scans of vintage originals as well as used the notes that they had from Lloyd Lore within their Gibson vault to make these as accurate as possible. But that is a significantly carved back, and it's a 2-piece center seam. And the 3-ply binding continues along here. I like how it even goes over the neck heel right there. That's funny. It's like a bell shape. In case you missed it earlier, whenever there's a sharp pointy part, they put another layer of binding right here. That way it protects the instrument if it gets dinged up. Same thing over here. Continuing up the back side of our neck here, we can see our stinger that we were talking about earlier. That's just a fancy term for putting black paint along the back edge. Then we have our Waverly tuners. It looks like they're upside down. Well, that's just how these guys are done, but they also have the silver plating and some more scrolls up here. But besides the stinger just solely being for cosmetics, I saw the reason. If you look closely at the top of the headstock, you can see the headstock is crafted utilizing 3 pieces of wood. So I believe they're trying to hide those obvious seam lines on the backside of this large headstock to give the illusion that it's crafted of 1 piece. Because this is the one more dead spot on this guitar. Now, don't get me wrong, it still does the chatoyant dancing. It just doesn't have as many lines. The side that you see while playing is just crazy, but that's because they crafted it utilizing different woods. They do a really good job hiding that along the edge, but if you know to look for it, you can see the seam line. It's kind of funny to me that they go through that much trouble for the headstock, but people are just naturally accepting of the center seam on the top and the back side. And it's a little awkward to weigh. It doesn't want to sit on there, but it's around 2 pounds, 7.3 ounces or so. Now it's time to sound how this magnificent crafted historic beasts sounds in the hands of someone who has no idea how to play mandolins, but gonna give it his best try anyway. My usual playing setup, I've got my RE20 capturing the tones where I think it sounds best, coming right from the F hole. The closer you get to the fretboard though, the tinier it sounds. I'll give you a little sweep of that.
nice plingy sound. The frets on this thing are insane as compared to a guitar. I mean, listen to these things. Like, who needs these?
So there we go, the Gibson F-5 Mandolin, the $20,000 1923 reissue. What are my final thoughts on this? I can't really give it a review necessarily, because this is the first mandolin of any type of acoustic quality that I've ever had in my hands, outside of a few of the Epiphone electrics. But I had a good time with it. I had some fun. They utilized some really nice woods. It's got that typical mandolin tone to it, but I have a much deeper found respect for the instrument now that I've got the chance to put my hands on one for a little bit. So thank you so much, Dr. Greg. If you're in the market for something cool, you can utilize my new Guitar Day service. It doesn't have to just be guitars. You know, within reason, you can always reach out. But all right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.